The bones or the skeleton of a character really serve as the very foundation for everything really on the character. It determines their height, determines the length of their arms, determines how high the cheekbones are, how far apart the eyes are going to be. It determines the posture. It determines their muscle attachments. It really determines everything about the foundation of a character. I'm going to keep repeating this. Get the bones right and everything else will follow. The skeleton is incredibly complicated and we simply have to simplify down the skeleton into easy to understand parts. Simply going through every single bone piece by piece is just overwhelming, and frankly it's not really going to help you either. We need to simplify it down because ultimately we care about surface anatomy. Again, we're not saving lives. We don't really care about what's going on the inside here, or like the ridges on the inside of this. Like it's just not that relevant. Specifically how many ribs you have is rarely relevant to anatomy. Specifically how many vertebrae you have is not particularly relevant for the vast majority of the artistic work you're going to be doing. So we are simply going to go through the most important bones and we'll talk about how you can simplify them. So we'll start off with the spine. The spine is this shape that goes through the whole body, the whole torso, from the hips to the skull, and it really gives you a lot of structure and flexibility. The spine tends to be overcomplicated, where you're looking at all these individual vertebrae here and you're trying to count all of them, and it just becomes way too overwhelming. You can really simplify this into 3 curves. The first curve is going to be the curve from the base of the skull right here down to around the shoulders. This is called, you can call this the cervical part. You can just call this the C. And notice it has a C for cervical, but that's also the same angle of the curve as well. And then we have the second curve that is here, and this goes for where the ribcage are. This is called the T, the thoracic part. And then we have the third curve that is the curve that goes here. This is called a lumbar. And this is basically what you have to memorize in terms of the spine, 3 curves. You can also think about the curves here in a different way. I used to think about these curves in the opposite way. So I would do like this and this and this. And the problem here is that you're attaching the head here, and you're attaching the ribs here, and you're attaching like the hips like here. So the whole thing gets wrong. So it's really important to just think about these as first it goes this way, then it goes this way, and then it goes this way. And the way I think about this is like first you have the C for cervical. Or what you can do, you can simply just write a parenthesis. You can just write like whatever you want in here. And it's just like parenthesis, close parenthesis. So it starts off with a parenthesis, which is just this way here. And then it goes this way, and then it goes this way. So it's very simple. This is one of these things that's just worth memorizing. You can also notice here that there is some balance to the whole thing as well. That like if you were to, you have these curves here, and really you can just take a straight line through it and it's going to be balanced. So it's really important that the spine is balanced. Also notice how far in it actually goes. If we were to just do a cross section here of it, and you notice here, this actually goes quite far in. Notice this actually goes quite far in. So the spine is not like a thing that's just like, it's not like you have the rib cage here and then the spine just goes like here. No, it goes quite far into it. It's kind of like a trunk going inside the whole thing. So that's really the spine. It goes from up here, then it goes to where the rib cage is, and then it goes to here where the lumbar is as well. And then we have the rib cage. The rib cage is essentially an egg shape. It's like a nice round shape that goes like so, kind of like an egg. It attaches to the spine, and then you can see there's a bit of a cut into it, like here. So that's basically the rib cage. You really should simplify the rib cage into simple to understand shapes, because the rib cage gets complicated, right? This stuff just gets really complicated if you start to go into every single bone. So this is going to be the simplified version of the rib cage. So you have the egg shape here on the front and on the back here as well. Then we do have one main shape here in the center we have to talk about. This is called the sternum. This is where you have one part up here, and then it goes down here, and this is where the ribs connect. So all the ribs are going to be connecting to this one here. Apart from, you see, we have like on the back here, we have like a floating rib here. So 2 floating ribs. So these are not going to be connecting to the sternum, but that's the rib cage. Egg shape here, cutaway here, and then we have the sternum in the center. So we're keeping this simple for now. We will of course go more in depth later on when it comes to these things. Then we have the hips. The hips is really a foundational part of the torso. It connects to the spine here, as you can see, it connects here, and then it also connects where it's also where the legs attach here as well. So the way I like to think about this is a complex shape. There's just a lot of stuff going on here. Muscles attached from the top here and muscles attached from the bottom here as well. So there's just a lot of stuff happening here. But a simple way of simplifying it is almost like we're just doing we have like Mickey Mouse. It's almost like we're just doing his ears. So we're just kind of doing, if you just look at his ears here. We're just doing this, and then we're just connecting them up like so. And this is going to make, hopefully, sense once I draw it on top. So you see here, we have like the ears, and they're just going like so. And then we just have like a shape in the center. And I find this to be a pretty effective way of thinking about it, because it is just such a complicated shape to sculpt or to draw. So the more you can simplify this down, the easier this is going to become. In terms of the proportion of it, you can think about this, like we mentioned in the proportion video, like basically one human head tall. Something to note about the hips as well is we have this ridge here. This is called the iliac crest. And iliac is just like the whole hips. So we call them the ilium. Basically, ilium is just the hips. And the crest here is just like this ridge here. This becomes incredibly important because unlike the rib cage, where like actually a large part of this is going to be like visible anatomy, you're going to see this through the skin. Like most of the hips are actually like covered by like organs or muscles or fat and all that. But this ridge here is really important to get right. If this is like the only thing you remember about the hips, Mickey Mouse ears and the ridge here, then you are very, very good for now. Then we have the shoulder blades. The shoulder blades are also called the scapula. The scapula or the shoulder blades are really, really important. And like we mentioned in the proportion video, there's about a head width between them as well. The shoulder blade can really be simplified down into a triangle, like so, which we are then adding another piece onto. You see this piece here? This is really important. It's not just a triangle. It has an additional piece going out of it, like so. So this is incredibly important to get right. I'm just going to show you actually what this specifically looks like from the top view, because that's important as well. So if you look at this from this view here, I just want to go a little bit in depth here. Not too much. We'll go more in depth later on. But what we're noticing here, it goes up like so, and then it has this ridge here. This is the ridge I was talking about, where this part here is just really, really, really important. What you can see as well is that this is where the arm attaches. The arm actually attaches to the shoulder blade or the scapula. I'm going to be adding more anatomical names as we get along, but we're going to keep the anatomical names quite simple. So the scapula, simplified down into just a little triangle with a ridge, like a spine going off it, like so. And this is where the arm attaches. Then we have the collarbones. The collarbones, also known as the clavicles, are the bones that go here. These are the bones that goes from the rib cage here, from the sternum, and they go out here, and it actually attaches to the scapula. So what does this actually look like from the top? This is where we have to think about this in terms of, and the top view is a lot more important than the bottom view. This is where, or the front view, side view. And I just accidentally cut away too much here. Let's just do it like so. So now we can see this more clarity. What we're seeing here is that we have the collarbones, the clavicles here, and they go in a very curved way. This is really important because if you don't curve it like so, and you just do this, now, if you were to shrug or move your shoulder backwards, what happens when you put this further back? You choke and die. So that's obviously not preferable. But what if you have a shape that goes like so, and this goes further back? Aha! This flows beautifully around the around your throat, so you don't choke and die, which is fantastic. Obviously, what we want. In terms of memorizing the shape for this, we have a very nice and easy trick. Notice this shape here, it goes like up like so. Then there is a little shape here, and then it goes down like so. There is a very, very simple shape we can use to memorize this, and this is just a bow and arrow. Like this is like one of the like horse archer bows, right? Where you have, you just have here, and this is a string, this is the handle, and then you just go, pew, shoot forward. And that's how you memorize the collarbones. Very, very nice and simple. The angle of the collarbones varies a little bit. Some people have collarbones going up like so. Some people have collarbones going down like so. It varies a little bit. This is where you just have to look at reference. In general, it's generally quite straight. But yeah, the most important part is you do the bow and arrow shape like so. And then we have the skull. The skull really deserves its own video. But in this case, it's just, you can think about this as like just one bone. Technically, it's a lot of bones, but it's just on top of the body. And this has a few notable marks. You have this like basically egg shape here on the back, and then you have the jaw that goes like so. This is like a separate bone. This articulates from like here. Then we have the face part here, like where we have the cheekbones and we have the nose here as well. So we won't really go more in depth about the bone for now because this is just very, very, very complicated. But at least the skull is basically, you can think about this as like one main bony area. The one big difference between the skull and a lot of other parts is that this is so bony. Like this part here, everything here is basically all bone. This is the surface you're going to be seeing. This is all just bone. Same with this, is all just bone. So this is an incredibly important piece to understand when it comes to the bones. If you don't understand the shape of the skull, of the cranium, when you're sculpting a portrait, you know, neck and up, then you are not going to be able to sculpt it. For a lot of things, you kind of cheat it, but for the skull, you really have to, or for the face, you really have to understand the bones. Then we have the upper arm, and the upper arm is really quite simple in a way. It's a bone here called a humerus, and it just goes down like so. And it's just, this is like the most bony shaped bone there is. Like this is one of the cartoony bones you see. It just goes like so. It has like a nice spherical shape up here, and then it goes down and it goes into, this is important, it goes into two pointy bits here. So it has one pointy bit here and one pointy bit here. Whenever you see pointy bits, think muscle attachment. Basically every single pointy bit on the in the skeleton is there for muscles to attach, and this is no exception. This is an incredibly important muscle attachment point. So tons of muscles are going to attach all over this. Even if you have like areas on the body that might be like a bit rough in certain areas, like for the bone might be perfectly smooth, and then you have like one area that's more rough. That also means muscle attachment. So that's the upper arm bone. And then we have two bones that are really important. This is for the forearm. This is where we have two bones here called the ulna and the radius. So here we have the ulna. This is the one that goes here. And then here we have the radius going here. I'm just going to pick a different color for this, going down like so. So this is the radius and this is the ulna. I don't expect you to memorize all these names right away. This is more so that we can just like prime you a little bit for it. What's cool about this, about the ulna, this is the elbow. This is the bone you see here. So a lot of stuff when it comes to bones is not directly visible, but this is a really important bony landmark right here. This is also really important to understand when it comes to the forearm, when it comes to the muscles, and we'll definitely get more in depth about that later on as well. But without this, you really can't understand the forearm. This is also how it rotates. A lot of joints, they have like a rotating joint here, so this thing just actually rotates. Well, you don't have like a rotation joint in the forearm, yet you can rotate your forearm around. What's happening is that it's basically a hinge joint here. It's not technically a hinge joint, but it means that you have a joint here, and then you have a shape here, and you have a shape here, and this just rotates up like so. So this is like a really good way of thinking about it. But how do you then rotate the hand like this way? You just need to, these points here are basically static, and then they just rotate around each other. Next up, we have the hands, and the hands are quite complicated. We have a ball of joints here, and this is a very important thing to talk about when it comes to the hand. These are not fingers. This is where the hand actually begins, and this is where the fingers begin. So you have 3 joints or 3 bones per finger. So this is stuff is entirely obvious if you look at your if you actually look at your hand. But this kind of stuff is a very common mistake that I see a lot of people do. This stuff here is all covered in like fat, and same here as well. This part here, it's all covered in fat and skin, tendon, all that kind of stuff. But this is where the fingers actually begin. So simplify this whole thing into one main volume, and then you have actual fingers going out from these parts here. Then we have the legs, and the legs are very, very similar to the arms in many ways, and we'll get a bit to that later on. But what you have to know for now is that we have the femur or the thigh bone. So that's the bone that goes from here and it goes outwards. And notice there is a diagonal here, and then there is a diagonal here. So this is really important. It's this bone does not go straight down like how the humerus goes straight down here. This does not do that. It has a ball here, then it goes outwards, and then you basically have the same bone as you had here. Remember the bone we had up here, the humerus, and this is basically the same as you have here, but with the addition of a bone here. So this is really, really, really important, and this would be like one of the widest points of the body as well. Obviously, if you take away the arms and such, because you can see this you have the hips here, and then you have this going out like so. So very, very important. We also have a really important bony landmark as well. That actually a few bony landmarks are important. We have this guy here. This is a bit of a heavier anatomical name, but this is called the greater trochanter. The greater trochanter is really important because it's a bony landmark, so you're seeing this on a lot of different people, but also it's where a lot of muscles are going to be attaching to. So it's a really important one to keep in mind. So the greater trochanter, and then down here we also have bony landmarks down here as well, like the same way we have with these guys here. Whenever you see this, think muscle attachment. Whenever you have this stuff as well, it's muscle attachment. This stuff here, you guessed it, muscle attachment. So whenever you see this, muscle attachment. And that just makes it a lot easier. And then for the lower legs, we have a very similar situation to the arms, where the difference is that this is more stable. The arms, aren't really particularly stable because we don't really walk on our arms. Well, for the legs, they are very stable because they have to have a lot of weight. Let's say above here, you're like 70 kilos. Then these guys here are going to have to lift 70 kilos. So, well, the arms, they don't really have to do that. They just have to lift whatever's in your hands at the moment, or just the hands if you have nothing there. So it's really important to think about this in terms of stability. So for the bones here, we have 2 bones. We have the tibia, which is this one here. This is the main one. And then we have the fibula that goes here. And this is really important. So 2 bones for the lower legs. And then we have another bone as well we haven't talked about. This is the kneecap. This is called the patella. This is this little guy here, a really, really important bone. And that's really it for the lower legs. And then of course we have the feet as well, and the same deal as with the hands as well. If we just were to zoom in here and look at the feet, we have the same thing here, where these basically look like hands, right, in terms of the same structure. So here we have the heel. This is a bit of a different one. We don't really have a heel on the hand, at least not to the same degree. We have a proper heel here, and whenever you see big point of it, think muscle attachment. Might have mentioned this a few times now. So there's going to be muscle attachment here. We also have like the toes here as well. So this whole thing is just like mass, And then we have the toes sticking out of this as well. So that's really it for the bones. As a quick recap here, the important parts we need to keep in mind is obviously the whole of the skull. This one is really important. We have the spine going down here like so. The 3 C's like so, goes down like so. We have the sternum, that's right here. And then we have the ribs going out like so. Remember, this is just an egg with a bit of a cutout into it. We have the hips, and for the hips, you have to remember this one, the iliac crest, and think about the Mickey Mouse ears as well. So this would be, basically these shapes here. And then for the legs, we have the femur that goes out like so, and it goes down like so as well. So diagonals, diagonal down and diagonal down. And then here we have the greater trochanter like so. Really, really important. Then we have the kneecap or the patella. And then we have 2 bones for the lower leg, this one and this one, called a tibia and a fibula. And then we have the same deal with the feet as with the hands. And for the torso here, we have the clavicles here. And remember, we have the sternum in the center like so. Then it goes down like so, and it goes down like so. And then we have a bow and arrow shape here. Obviously, you don't have this one here, but you have the other parts of the bow. So that's this shape here. And then for the back, we still have the spine going through the whole thing. And then we have the scapula, think a triangle, with a attachment going off it. Really, really, really important to have the attachment going on. And this attaches as well up here. This attachment goes up here with the clavicles as well. And then for the upper arm, we have the humerus going down like so into 2 pointer bits, rotates up here and connects to the scapula. And then we have 2 bones in the forearm called the ulna and the radius. And for the hand, keep in mind that it's the same thing as with the foot. We have 1 main body mass here, and then we have the fingers sticking out of that. So yeah, that's it for the bones.